a leader unlike any and the longest reigning monarch on Middle-earth. In the movies he is depicted as a cold-hearted, greedy, selfish king, but this is far from how Tolkien portrayed him. Thranduil was not only an exemplary and benevolent ruler, but he was also a brave warrior. Today on Fantasy Archive we cover the elven king Thranduil, popular for his good looks and one of the most intriguing characters from The Hobbit. Thranduil was born to Orifer, who was a Lathrim elf of Doriath in the First Age and early Second Age. The Lathrim were the Sindarian elves that lived in the broad forests of central Beleriand, Neldorath, and region, under the rule of the High King Thingol, along with his queen Melian, who was from the Order of the Maiar. After the ruin of Doriath early in the Second Age, many groups of survivors migrated to the east. Thranduil and his father Orifer left Lindon and arrived at Greenwood the Great, later known as Mirkwood, where there were mostly Sylvan elves, or the Wood Elves. The Sylvan elves were Telerian in origin and were remotely related to the Sindar. They were those who stayed back in Middle-earth and didn't migrate west to dwell in the light. The Sylvan were known to be dangerous and unruly. Nevertheless, they were very welcoming to the Noldor, and especially the Sindar, who migrated eastward. Orifer thus became the king of the Sylvan, and made his first home at Amon Lanc, near Lorien. The Sylvan elves were small, scattered people that were hard to distinguish from the Avari. With the establishment of the woodland realm under King Orifer, they became more orderly and wise. Orifer moved northwards twice, away from the Noldorian influence and the rising power of the dwarves from Khazad-dûm. Though he preferred to maintain distance, Orifer knew they would not achieve peace so long as Sauron remained undefeated. In the Second Age, Orifer took a large army of Sylvan elves with him to join the last alliance with the Noldor, dwarves, and the survivors of Númenor. However, Orifer was stubborn and didn't want to follow the orders from Noldor leader Gil-galad. He rushed before Gil-galad gave the signal to charge. Although the war was a success, in the Battle of Daggerlad, the Sylvans suffered heavy casualties, the most severe being the killing of King Orifer. This tragedy occurred when the poorly equipped Sylvan army rushed into battle before Gil-galad could give a signal. After Sauron's defeat, Thranduil salvaged the remaining forces and led the people back into his realm, where he was crowned king, the Elven King. Thranduil possessed a steady mind. He was inspired by King Thingol, with a great vision for the well-being of his kingdom. He formulated policies that came from a mature understanding of geopolitics based on his experiences in Middle-earth. He fostered the first and only trading alliance of elves, men, and dwarves. All the free peoples benefited equally from the trade and relationships that flourished under the Elven King. He believed that the only way to peace was to forge strong alliances. Thranduil was well aware that dark forces still loomed over Middle-earth. The horrors he experienced at Mordor never faded, and it was only a reminder to him that the worst is yet to happen. In the Third Age, the Shadow of Darkness reappeared and changed Amon Lanc to the evil stronghold called Dol Guldur. Darkness also took over the forest, and the forest was then called Mirkwood. Giant walking spiders, orcs, and scary fauna were some of the signs. It was first thought that the shadow that crept in was of the Nazgûl, but much later it was discovered that it was indeed Sauron, but a weak Sauron. When Gandalf came to Dol Guldur to confirm his suspicions, the White Council got rid of him, and Sauron fled to Mordor. The peace lasted a few hundred years for the elves, until Sauron returned stronger than before. The darkness destroyed the once vibrant forest, and the fight against evil left the elves suspicious and hard. Seeing his people weary from the extreme darkness they faced, Thranduil retreated with his people near the forest river. They delved underground and built a new palace like the Menegroth, filled with life and light. He built a safe haven for his people. When Thorin Oakenshield and his company stirred up the giant spiders of the forest, interrupting the elves' feast, Thranduil showed remarkable restraint, considering he was repeatedly provoked by Thorin, who was later put in a cell. The dwarves escaped with the help of Bilbo Baggins. Thranduil later came to know about the dwarves' quest. After Smaug's destruction of Lake Town, Thranduil hurried to help the penniless men, women, and children. When news came of Smaug's death, Thranduil decided to seize his share of treasure from what Smaug had hoarded. On his way to the Lonely Mountain, Thranduil again sent aid to Esgaroth, before setting out to collect his prized jewel. A dispute arose with the dwarves over the treasure at the Lonely Mountain. The dwarves had promised a portion of treasure to the people of Dale. When Bard the bowman insisted on fighting the dwarves before they could strike, Thranduil was not willing to spill blood over gold. Thranduil rather hoped for some means of reconciliation. This delay facilitated the unity between the dwarves, elves, and man when they faced their common enemy in the Battle of the Five Armies. Thranduil also builds a meaningful bond with Bilbo Baggins when he helped reopen negotiations with a stubborn Thorin during the siege of the Lonely Mountain. The Elven King considered him a friend who would be welcomed and honored by him and his people. Bilbo gifted Thranduil a necklace of silver and pearls as compensation for being an uninvited guest in the king's halls. Thranduil wholeheartedly accepted the gift and called him his elf friend. Thranduil's selflessness is evident when he sends out his own son Legolas to Rivendell to inform them of Gollum's escape under his watch, despite the perils and dangers to his son. This act was him owning his responsibility as a king. His last valiant stand was the victorious battle under the trees during the War of the Ring. Thranduil was the one leader to fight the enemy without the Ring of Power. He was both powerful and generous. He divided the forest in his realm between himself, Celeborn, and the woodsmen. He also allowed his son to take the southern region and establish the new elven realm, Ithilien. The Elven King was not someone chasing treasure around Middle-earth. He ruled for over 3,000 years, and his priority was his people. Add to that a fair tradesman, a wise policymaker, a brave general, a loving father, and a true friend.